200 horsepower. Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the Simple Car Guy channel. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing all of the issues that you can expect on the BMW Z4 E89. This car was manufactured from 2009 to 2016 and there were about 120,000 units built. So over those 7 years, the car had a few different engines. It was also facelifted in March 2013. We'll discuss the differences in the engines as well as the different versions of the car. As you can imagine, there could be quite a few variations of this car. But I'm also going to look into the common issues that may not depend on the engine and are common, obviously, across all of the cars. I'm also going to look into the personal experience I've had with the car, as I've had to fix many issues and even replace the engine. I purchased my car at auction knowing that it had major mechanical issues. I did not know the extent of the issues, but I was expecting something to be pretty major, as I paid very low money for this car. What turned out to be the issue is that the engine had a knocking rod, it had timing chain issues, and a few other things that I did not really want to deal with at the end. So what I've decided to do is change the engine. I swapped the engine to a 30,000 mile engine from a junkyard, which has been running great so far. I do still have a little, little things that I need to fix on it, but none of them are major or anything that would, not want me to drive the car. When I purchased the car, I had a little over 110,000 miles. I looked into the Carfax history and other service history that came with the car. It was actually serviced pretty well over the time. It was at the dealer, every half a year or year or so for its oil change and the regular maintenance. I did not see anything major that was done to the engine unless it was done, by the individual or at a local shop. So what I'm trying to say is that the car didn't really have any big issues until the engine kind of blew up. After I swapped the engine, there were still a few little things I needed to fix on the engine, such as the wastegate rattle. This is because I only did the engine itself and not the accessories that come with the engine, such as the alternator or the turbo or the manifold or any of that stuff. So all of that stuff is still from a 110,000 plus car, which over time they wear out. So I had to swap the manifold and do little things like that. The only other issue I'd like to mention is that my leather seats are slightly worn, but I've cleaned them and they look pretty decent for what they are, especially for a car with this many miles. But honestly, my biggest issue with the car is that I live in the Midwest and I can't drive the car with the top down all year round. If you take a look at my channel, you see a lot of videos of me working on this car, and that's not because it's unreliable. I'm just trying to do preventative maintenance and also just make videos for you guys. So don't look into that and be like, there's 10 videos on how to change this or do that on this car. That doesn't necessarily mean that I want bad on my car. I just wanted to be doing a little bit of preventative maintenance, and I want to keep this car for many, many years, and I don't want to have to deal with issues if I take it on a long drive or a long trip or something like that. Now I'm going to discuss the common issues with the BMW Z4 that are not related to the engines. As you can imagine, one of the more common issues with this car is the roof itself. Rattles and squeaks are pretty common in the roof of this car, but they're not nearly as bad as some of the other cars that I've been in with this type of roof. What really helps is just wiping it down every few weeks, like with just soap and water. Like it will actually, loosen up and soften down all of these rubbers, and it removes most of the squeaks. I would also definitely suggest keeping it in the garage, or at least cover the car if you're going to park under a tree. Any sap and dirt and debris that gets into these rubbers and into all of the mechanisms, it can't be good for your car. It will cause issues, so you got to be careful with that. You can also fix a lot of the squeaky roof issues by just tightening the latch locking mechanism. That means it's going to go down just a little bit further to where it seals properly, and there's not going to be any room for movement as you're driving over bumps or anything like that. Another issue with the roof is that the hydraulic cylinder gives out in some cases. What will happen is that the roof will open halfway and then just stop. Eventually it'll lower itself, but it's not going to go all the way to the correct position. In this case, the issues are usually caused by water seeping through the trunk seals and then damaging the hydraulic unit or the wiring around it. The next issue with the roof is the micro switches. It could be an easy job or a hard job depending on where the micro switch is. There's a few of those in the roof. So if you get lucky and it's one of those at the top, you can replace it for a few dollars, maybe $50 or so. If it's a little bit deeper in the trunk, it may require a little bit of labor, so that could get expensive. The various positions of the retractable hardtop are controlled by a module in the trunk, as well as 8 switches, 8 micro switches, the ones that we just talked about. Unfortunately, the roof will not function if any of the micro switches or the hall sensors are functioning properly and sending the signal to the rear module, which is located in the trunk. It has to detect the proper position of the roof, which will allow it to open or close properly. So if you need to diagnose this, you would look for a CTM or a convertible top module, which will show you all the micro switches and the other sensors that might be faulty. Another sensor that's really important for the roof to function properly is the ambient temperature sensor. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it has to function properly as well. As I mentioned earlier, the car was facelifted in 2013, so I would definitely recommend getting the facelifted car, as the roof is reinforced in those newer cars. It will also allow you to operate the roof, so open or close the roof up to 25 miles an hour. Another common issue that I wanted to add is the run flat tires. Now the tires themselves are not the problem, other than that they're very stiff, but that makes the wheels, that usually the 296, that's the one I've seen the most issues with, they get cracked, and those get very, very expensive to repair. For this very reason, I run my Nito summer tires in the summer, and I have 17-inch wheels on the car right now for the winter. I also have these 437M wheels from BMW, so this is the ones that come stuck on M3, M4, and they seem to be a lot better quality. They don't crack or bend or anything like that unless you really mess up. The only other common issue on the pre-LCI cars is that the water gets into the light clusters in the back, and this is, like I said, for the pre-LCI models. This is mostly to do with the rear lights cracking, water getting in, and then you'll see a lot of condensation, which obviously doesn't look very good. Before we start looking into each model of the car, I'd really appreciate if you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out and encourages me to create better quality and better research videos. The first car we're going to look into is the BMW Z4 S-Drive 28i. This comes with an N20 engines and it was manufactured from 2011 to 2016. Now these engines come with a few different issues, especially the early ones. Lots of timing chain issues and even the chain tensioners that come pretty loose, and that's what kind of allows the timing chain to stretch. I definitely recommend getting that fixed as soon as possible, or at least changing the chain tensioner, as this will allow for the timing chain to prolong its life. Other issues that are common are rod bearings that go bad on these cars. I've experienced all of those issues on my car myself and had to do a lot of the repairs. I have videos on the timing chain, but it's not an easy or a cheap job, even if you do it yourself. This car has also been recalled for hydraulic brake system. It might be a small issue or not that common in a lot of cars, but it is kind of dangerous since you might lose your brakes. Another issue with the engine is the valve cover that cracks. It's also a pretty easy job to do. I've done that one myself. I have a video on it. Shouldn't take you more than half an hour or so to do. But if you don't, you're gonna get leaks that kind of go in the engine. You're gonna start smelling burning gas and all those kind of things. And the last thing that is very common in this car is the wastegate rattle. I've had to deal with that myself in this car as well. So as you can see, a lot of these issues I've had to deal with myself, and I found fixes for them, and are pretty cheap for most of them. What happens is the little arm that actuates the wastegate is actually becoming loose and it starts to rattle. So you have to replace the entire manifold. I have a video on that as well, so check that out. But that's pretty much it for the engine issues on these N20 engines. The next car we're going to look into is the S-Drive 30i. This car was manufactured from 2009 to 2011 and comes with the N52 engine. Basically what you need to know about this car is that it's a solid engine, it's a very reliable car, but of course it's getting a little bit old, so the newest one you can get is the 2011. There are a few common oil leaks, but that's kind of common on a lot of BMW engines, so it's nothing out of the ordinary. The only thing to worry about is that make sure the engine wasn't overheated, and if it was, that all of the issues were fixed properly. I would definitely recommend the 30i if you want a reliable car that's not going to give you a lot of problems, even if it is a little bit older. The next Z4 we're going to talk about is the S-Drive 35i. This car was manufactured from 2009 to 2016, and it came with the N54 engine. The N54 engine has won many Best Engine of the Year awards, and is considered to be a very, very good engine. However, it did come with a lot of issues. It was famous for the high pressure fuel pump issues, and in the United States they actually extended the warranty to 10 years or 120,000 miles. That's how bad the issue was. A lot of the early cars also had many issues with the software updates, as when you would update the car at the dealer, it would lock up and you'd have to get a new computer from Germany, like shipped from Germany, and programmed to your VIN number, otherwise it wouldn't work. So that's kind of a big one, but fortunately that was on the early cars, and most of that stuff has been sorted out since you'll be getting it, at least a few years old at this point. For the next few items I had to have a little list, as I couldn't remember all of these little issues. One of the first ones that is very common is that you're going to have to change your ignition coils and plugs, of course. This is starting to happen about 50 to 60,000 miles. It's more of a maintenance item, so it's not too bad. You will also start seeing a lot of oil leaks around 90,000 miles, usually around the oil filter housing, also around the valve cover. And if you do have a cover there, you cannot just repair it. You have to replace the entire cover, so that gets a little bit expensive. These engines also have a lot of issues with electronic water pumps. I've seen many posts about people having to replace those, and I've actually had to replace the water pump on my 335xi, which had the same engine. You'll also have to deal with injectors and leakage in the injectors. Starters go bad on these cars as well, and parts are not very expensive, but it's a pain to get to that starter. Also, interior and body parts are very expensive on these cars. You know, especially with the 35i, they have a slightly different body kit, so that gets very expensive, especially if you have the M Sport package. And of course, there are some turbo issues. They're not very common, but you will have some whistling sounds and, of course, the famous Wastegate rattle. The only other Z4 that was sold in the United States was the S-Drive 35IS. This car was manufactured from 2010 to 2016 and it had the upgraded N54 engine. Now, a lot of the issues that came on the regular 35i were still common on these IS cars. However, this car did not come with a manual transmission. You can only get the DCT, which did have a lot of issues on its own. You would experience a lot of lag, but that could be fixed by actually just reprogramming the transmission itself. There's also vibrations that come from DCT, and that seems like a bigger issue. From what I've read, you can only solve that by replacing the entire transmission. There's also a lot of DCT leaks, and those can be fixed by replacing seals and sometimes the lower pen. However, that can get expensive. Just to clarify, all the other issues from the 35i are still common on the 35IS. In conclusion, guys, I would definitely recommend getting a BMW Z4, even though they do have some problems, but these are not very uncommon in the BMW world. All of the engines that come with these cars come on many other BMWs, so you can definitely find people to work on them and a lot of instructional videos on YouTube. I would also recommend getting a 2013 or newer car, as those have a lot of improvements, such as the roof. The roof is going to be a lot stronger. You're also going to get the LED headlights, which look pretty sweet, and a slightly better body kit if you get the M Sport version of the car. Since the N52 engine was only available from 2009 to 2011, I can't really recommend that car unless you're okay with getting an older car. The N20 engine, it is pretty troublesome, so I'd probably avoid that one as well, even though I have it in my car. So my recommendation would be getting a 2013 or newer S-Drive 35i, not the S, the one with the manual transmission with the M Sport. Those seem to be the best cars out there, and I would, I got the N20 because that's what I got and it was cheap, but I would definitely recommend getting that one, and you'll have fun in it. It's going to be really fast. You're going to have over 300 horsepower. Well guys, that was my camera crashing from the tripod, so I think I've done enough filming for today. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did and learned something new, please like and subscribe. Like I said, it really helps the channel out, and I'll see you in the next one.